last question here, and this is more on media coverage. So you have Sharon Hinckliffe, who asks, what is the best way to notify the media of 2A issues in a state, whether it's gun bills being proposed or to notify of events that are changing the culture in society to be more normalizing to firearms? She gives an example of this is in Washington State. So one of the things she was talking about is like the Washington State magazine ban that they're now putting through. I guess it just went through the legislature, right? You read about that. What's
right. It's still waiting for signature from Governor Inslee. He's said he's going to sign it. He just hasn't announced when, and he hasn't yet signed it. But it's all but law at this point.
Okay. But she's complaining about gun owners had some good stories recently in local press in Washington State, but had a lot of poorly reported stories on this magazine ban. And
sure.
So she's wondering what's the best way to pitch stories to media and to try and correct or influence their, reporting on things like the magazine ban. What are some of your thoughts as somebody who writes about gun policy and politics every day?
Sure. Yeah. I'm going to defer to you for a lot on this question because you've been in media for longer than me, but there are a few things you can do. For example, you pointed a couple of newspapers that, printed you called it misinformation. And if I know what she's talking about, I think I know what she's talking about, where they mislabeled what the magazine capacity law is. She called it high capacity ammunition, I think was one of the newspapers.
Yeah, I remember that. That's right.
But yeah, you can reach out to newspapers and they'll hopefully, if they're reputable and ethical, will issue corrections on stories. You can also do things like submit letters to the editor if you want to get a different point of view on a story. You don't think a point of view captured, what's going on, get that published. And also you should subscribe to places like The Reload, where we try to write about firearms news fairly from people that know about firearms. Firearms are part of our everyday lives, so you can at least hopefully trust us to be a little more accurate when we report on these kind of things. But if you have any other ideas.
Yeah, no, I think those are really good suggestions. Certainly reaching out to media and having conversations with them in a way that's as respectful as you possibly can be. I mean, these reporters are just regular people.
Right.
And so if you start screaming at them, they're probably more likely to just ignore whatever you're trying to sell them. And I understand how frustrating it can be when somebody is reporting on things and making all kinds of mistakes and acting in what appears to be bad faith, right? That it's easy to get upset and yell at somebody over that, but you're going to have a better time usually if you're more respectful and try to stick to explaining whatever they got wrong and why it was wrong. But beyond that, the other question about like, how do you get media coverage for something you think is a story, right? Like if you're having an event, and you're training new shooters or something, or you're getting together a new group of people that's getting into guns for the first time, or starting to advocate for the first time, like that has a different story to tell than what's been out there before, right? There's all kinds of interesting groups that don't get a lot of coverage in the gun community. And, I think making relationships with reporters, being a good source is always going to be beneficial to reaching out to getting more coverage of the things that you think deserve that coverage. If you are involved in a brand new gun rights group that's started up and it has some sort of different approach or different constituency than other groups out there, reach out to, local reporter, reach out to anyone you can think of who would be interested in covering that sort of thing. And then if it fits in with what they normally write about, that's your best approach. And then be available, I guess, as a source too. If you're knowledgeable, be available to try and put your point of view into a story. A lot of reporters want to have points of views from all different sides of an issue. If you have if you're good at talking to to media. That's certainly one way you can affect that kind of change. And then, I think Jake actually made a really good point there about, obviously this is sort of self-serving on our part, but I think supporting media that does the kind of reporting you want to see, which is exactly what you're doing right now by being a member of the Reload, is really important. I mean, the Reload is not, some juggernaut. We don't have corporate backing, or we're not funded by any of the gun groups, which is the kind of reporting I think more people would like to see. We have our own background and ideas, but and our own editorial positions on things, but we're not funded by anyone, and we're not anyone's mouthpiece, basically.
Right.
And so the more you can find publications like that focus on the things you want reported on, the more you should support them by either sharing the articles or supporting them financially. And so that's what everyone who's asked these questions is doing for the Reload. The Reload would not exist at all without our members' support. And so, that's a big thing, is like supporting good journalism the journalism that you like, and giving tips, sending in tips. We're two guys. We don't have ears everywhere. So,
Right.
Send us tips too would be, but you can do that with local media too, or major media outlets as well. We're not bothered by anything like that. But if you have a big story, definitely think of us first if it's gun related. Anyway,
That's right.
Those are some of my pieces of advice, I guess. Try to find their email address, try to go to events that they're covering and meet them if it's appropriate, right? Don't be weird. But like if they're going to cover a bill signing, or they're going to cover some sort of range event, talk to them, try to introduce yourself. You got to figure out who the writers are that would be covering something gun related in your local community, and talk to those people, and be normal and respectful and knowledgeable when you do it.